interest in your well-being and, by extension, the well-being of the world. As Derek indicated, I have had a varied background, and I am more interested in how people operate than numbers and concepts, although numbers and concepts can be important. For example, how many of you are completely happy with the numbers in your bank account right now? Okay, so yeah, one or two, good for you. And that's the start of satisfaction, so good on you on that. But I'd like to distinguish, for one thing, what wealth is and what money is. So, they sound the same, don't they? Wealth and money. But let's look at the concept of wealth and how money's included as part of wealth. So think for a minute, if you're truly wealthy, what would be included in that? Anybody, what would be included in true wealth? What's the obvious one? The obvious one's money, right? Time. And why would time be part of true wealth?
You want to do what you want.
Yeah, what you want, when you want.
That's right.
Health.
Yeah, and health. And let's look at this one for time just for a second, because if you don't have the money, can you afford the time in this world? No. You see, for a lot of my life, well, a part of my life, I was a wage slave, like probably a lot of people. What does that mean? Well, slavery has a long history, and actually, you could make a case that we still exist in a form of slavery today, but they don't own me. It's better off to just rent me. So I become a wage slave. I can go home and take care of my own health and my own retirement. They don't have to take care of me. They just need to have me show up and do certain things, and they give me a bit of money, and I go off on my own. And if I don't do it, they can replace me. So it's a new form of, and I don't want to be too radical here and call it, but it is a form of slavery. So this time, if you had enough money, is it conceivable you could buy back the rest of your life? You could buy back the time that you would have to have put into making money. And isn't time the single most important thing? See, a wise man once told me, he said, Michael Jude, you can make more money, but you can't make more time. Now, I don't want to say that's true, because I'm actually working on that. That's a project, to have more time. And I think that that's entirely possible for us as human beings. But I want to move on a little bit. You said health. Why would health be part of true wealth? Why would that be?
Because if we are healthy, we can think how we will succeed.
All right.
Yeah.
Well said. Everybody hear that?
No.
If you're healthy, and I'll use my own words around this. Yeah. Have you ever been ill? Have you ever thought about how much money you have in the bank making you feel any better or any worse? In that moment of pain or discomfort, it truly doesn't matter. I mean, I could be a zillionaire, and if I'm not feeling good, all that money doesn't mean anything. I might get a better hospital room. So what? So true wealth, of course, health, time and health. What else? Happiness. That's a beautiful one. Isn't that part of true wealth? To be happy, to be fulfilled, to have a spiritual destiny or purpose or some relationship with something bigger that inspires us. I think so. That's a key part of true wealth. What else? What else? Satisfaction. Yeah. And why would satisfaction? How would you define that, and how would that be important to wealth?
Because if you don't have satisfaction, you keep on moving ahead. We won't be like we have an intense life.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So this thing called satisfaction, this is worth looking at, because part of satisfaction brings out a virtue in us called gratitude. And I do believe that this thing called gratitude is one of the keys to creating wealth. And we might have time to talk about that a little bit later. What's another one? What is another important, if you think of yourself as truly wealthy in all its splendor, what else would be there for you?
Inner peace.
Inner peace, yes, a spiritual relationship, inner peace, feeling good about ourselves. Wouldn't it be horrible? Wouldn't it be the ultimate in irony to be very, very wealthy and very unhappy and not be at peace with ourselves? Wouldn't that be sort of an irony, right? So somebody else said something.
People to share that with.
People to share it with. Good relationships. Isn't that important? You see, I believe that each one of these things we've identified in and of itself is worth doing. And yet, this thing called happiness or joy in human beings I don't want to say it's fleeting, because I want to say it's available to all of us at all times. But without one of those, any one of those, it can feel a little off balance. And then I would say there is one more, and that's money. Having money is an important part of wealth, right? So it would, in my mind, be inappropriate to just focus on money, but money is probably one of the biggest limitations for most of us. Would you agree? Yeah. I'm gonna say that the lack of money is possibly the single biggest challenge that most people have. It's not money, it's the lack of money. Put it right where it is. And it's almost worth looking at what this thing called money is. Because have you ever stopped to think, what is money, really? Okay, I've got some banknotes in my pocket. Yeah, that looks like money. Sure, that's what we call money. But what is this? This is a piece of paper. It's some pieces of paper, isn't it? Why are those pieces of paper any more important than this piece of paper? Yeah, this has some power. It has power because we all agree that this paper is worth more than this paper. But if I had the world's next breakthrough in technology on this piece of paper versus this paper, suddenly that would become more important. But let's look at the history of money, because this is important to understand what this thing is money and where it came from and what are the rules for money and what are the dynamics and what does money do and what doesn't it do? Would that be important and interesting? Yeah? Okay. So some of the earliest forms of money that we know of, the earliest banknotes like this are only a couple hundred years old. They didn't exist 1,000 years or 5,000 years ago. What was before banknotes? Anybody? Coins, largely, right? And isn't it true that these coins have thousands of years of history? You can buy old Roman coins, old Greek coins, and you might even get some ones before that. But they didn't go back forever. They were actually created sometime in the past. They were created, and they had a specific purpose. But you know what? It's not necessarily so that average people had money, coins. It was kind of rare, actually. Kings had coins. The elite had coins. But a lot of other people didn't have them. Before that, somebody said barter. Yeah, actually, you could make a case that credit came before money. Now, that might be an interesting thought. Credit came before money. Because barter, oftentimes, if I happened to have some corn and you had a sheep and we met at the same time and we could exchange, that was perfect. But what if my corn came in at a different time than you slaughtered your sheep? Well, I'd give you the corn and you would give me credit, right, for the sheep when they come in. So credit actually is one of the earliest human forms of what we would call money. But before that, or alongside that, there was another form which is not so pleasant to think about. And that was, what was that? Yeah, it's plunder. Plunder. So as human beings, we were hunter-gatherers or raiders or opportunists or foragers or whatever you want to call it. Then about 5,000 years ago, people figured out how to grow stuff, and they became wealthy and prosperous because they could feed themselves all through the year. And then, of course, the plunderers would go plunder it. And, that began a whole nother chapter we don't have time to go into tonight. But early along the way, somewhere along the way, people found these things, these certain metals that had noble properties, like gold and silver, right? And what I mean by noble properties is they didn't rust, you could polish them up and they were real shiny, and they almost looked like there was some transcendent energy in them, like a spiritual energy, like a God energy. So the earliest forms of money that we know, in physical money, are these discs, these gold discs that the priests had in the temples. And that goes back quite a ways. So isn't this interesting? How many of us today think that money was invented by the governments, like our governments? See, money actually was our invention. We as people decided what was important And what happened was somewhere along the way, the plunderers plundered enough and they took control of the money, and now they issue banknotes. Okay, nothing wrong with that, by the way. It works. If you want to go buy some petrol, you can use those banknotes. That's fine. But I just want to kind of start to demystify this thing called money and actually give you some power around money. Now you know a little bit about the history of money, but let's look at the dynamics of money. How's money created, or how's wealth created? How do we, more importantly, how do we create money? So I'm going to give you a little brief tour of history. And what I mean by that, talked about how back in the day, we go back before 5,000 years, virtually everybody was a hunter, a gatherer, a fisher, or a forager, and that's how we lived. And it was pretty rough. It just come out of an ice age. Let's face it, it wasn't easy living, but it was okay. I mean, we survived. And there were only probably maybe 1 million or less than 1 million people on the whole planet that we know of. So people were far apart, and probably a lot of people came and left, and you never heard about them. Because there wasn't really any recorded history, and they didn't build big skyscrapers, so, it was what it was. But when farmers in mostly the Middle East found a way to cultivate grains, they suddenly created wealth. So the first form of wealth was plunder. The second form of wealth was growing things. If you could grow enough food, you could keep your whole family and maybe the whole community alive through the winter. And maybe you had some left over you could barter. Now, that was 5,000 years ago. Move forward to this thing called the Middle Ages, which was still largely agricultural, into the Industrial Revolution. So it took about 5,000 years to get to the Industrial Revolution. Now, why is that important? Because the Industrial Revolution, how you created wealth, was different than growing things or stealing things. Or gathering things, I should say. Whatever. The way to create wealth during the Industrial Revolution was what? Anybody? Manufacture. Now, before, if you made a chair, you could go out and gather the wood, you could cure it, you could design the chair, you could put all the pieces together, and you could polish it up, and then you could maybe trade it or use it. That was one person typically, and it took a long time. You had to have a lot of skills. Not everybody could do it. But suddenly, with this thing called a factory, you had specialized labor. You could get a bunch of people together. You just buy the wood, or they go get it, and this other person cuts it, and this other person puts it together, and this other person actually sells it. And suddenly, chairs were available widely, and they were inexpensive. That created massive amounts of wealth. Wealth that had never been seen before on the planet was created by putting capital or savings to work in a factory. Perfect. That lasted quite a long time. Now let's fast forward again another 100, 200 years. We went from thousands and thousands to 5,000 to a couple of hundred. Wealth was created differently, starting with, say, 1950 onward. And that was created more from not gathering things or growing things or building things, but working on things, called the service economy. Suddenly you have more people doing things like being teachers or mechanics or scientists or, working, not making things, but working with service. I want to fast forward again a shorter time. Notice they're getting very short now, 30, 40 years. It was only 20, 30, 40 years ago, we moved into what's called the knowledge economy. So people no longer worked on things. Wealth wasn't created by working on things. It was created by knowing about things, thinking about things, and sharing that knowledge. And of course, out of that came big companies that you know the names of that are just, they dwarfed factories, they dwarfed service companies, and huge amounts of wealth were created. Okay? Now we're going to move again another up to the contemporary day, up to today, to where massive amounts of wealth are created, but they're created differently than before. And now we're in the information age. Now wealth is created in a very specific way. Now here's a question for you. Name for me a company that didn't exist 10, 15, 20 years ago. You've used their product probably today, maybe several times today. It costs you nothing. It was free to you. The owners are gazillionaires. They're under 40.
Facebook.
And yeah, and you know, you could say trade me, Facebook, Amazon, Google. As a matter of fact, there's the term they use on Wall Street are the FANGs, F-A-N-G-S. Anybody know what they stand for? Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. These are the hot companies. They've created more wealth in such a short period of time. They don't plunder. They don't grow anything. Do they make anything? No. Do they service anything? Not really. What do?
Disseminate information.
They give away extremely valuable stuff to you on demand for free. Now, if you told your grandparents this, oh yeah, I'm going to get rich giving away stuff for free. They go, you know, that doesn't fit with anything I know. What I know is go to school, get a job, and they'll what?
Education.
They'll retire you. And then you can have your golden years to enjoy that money. Anybody believe that that's the way to get rich today? No, probably not. I mean, it may work. But that's not the strategy that's used to create wealth today. So now you've had a tour of history. You've had a little bit of how money is created, what it is, what are some of the attributes. Now you know how wealth is created, financial wealth, right? Now, wouldn't it be interesting for you to be able to do a similar thing to what these FANGs do, these modern information technology companies? Would that be of value to you to know, to take that apart and understand what they do and how they do it? Especially if you could recreate that in your life, would that be valuable? Would it be valuable for you to be able to create financial wealth that gives you the time and can give you the relationship support and give you location freedom and possibly even provide spiritual or emotional relationship meaning in your life and give you immense satisfaction? Would that be a good recipe for true wealth? Yeah. So let's unpack it. Let's look at that. Let's look at what they're doing and specifically how they're doing it, specifically how you can do something like this for yourself. And then let's look at why you would or wouldn't do it. And I hope to bring you to a place where you can choose. If we lay all this out for you and it makes sense to you, then I hope you are in a position, you're empowered to choose for yourself what you want to do about it. That's my mission here today, is to share this information and to offer you a choice. Fair enough? Okay. So let's look at what do they do. Let's take Facebook, because a lot of people are familiar with it. People know the story. There's a popular movie. What is it they do? What does Facebook do, and how do they create wealth?
Keeps people in touch.
Yes.
Yeah,
Provide communication.
communications, and keeps in touch.
Advertising.
Advertising. Right, so they're providing...
They replace the phone, they replace the.
Very good.
You don't have to dial. in.
Yeah, so we call it...
Instantaneous.
So they facilitate
10
communication.
minutes
Yeah,
For the connections.
yeah.
Get instantaneous, get gratification straight away.
Perfect. So we call those disruptive technologies. These are things that have disrupted the old way of making a phone call or communicating or keeping in touch, right? Let's look at why this is important. They've been able to monetize something that you are already doing. That's brilliant, isn't it? In its very simplest, they found a way to make money of something that you're already doing, and they're going to help you do it better, and they're not going to charge you for it. That's brilliant. That's like free energy. But of course, it's not free, is it? I mean, they're pretty smart guys. They figured out something. And they figured out a system and a structure, and that system has rules, and that system has dynamics, and that system has repeatable parts that you can pull apart and look at them, and you can put them back together, and it works. So let's take it apart. First of all, they understand human nature. They understand that people want to communicate. And as important is people want to share things. They want to share things with their friends, right? And I'll give you a good example of that. Let's say that we're friends and I know you like movies. And I say, hey, I know you like adventure movies. There's a great new James Bond movie. And I saw it and I think you'd like it. And it's playing down the street. And you go, well, gosh, Michael, Jude, thank you for that. That's wonderful. You're a great friend. You told me about it. And they go see the movie. Perfect. I did what friends do, right? I know something good. I tell my friend. I share it. Perfect. That's what friends do. Let's also say that I see the movie and it's not any good. And I would also tell them that. I'd say, don't waste your money. Don't waste your time. That's what friends do, right? We communicate. The difference is, if you go to the movie theater, you watch the movie on my recommendation. When I go down there next week to watch a new movie, do they say, Michael Jude, thank you for sending your friend Richard along? He bought a ticket, he bought some popcorn, he didn't have a soda, but he had a good time. And, I want to thank you. And you know what? We're going to give you some popcorn. I know you like popcorn. Here, thank you very much. You saved us advertising in the paper. Anybody ever have that happen to you? No, of course not. That's a fantasy, right? Well, it's a nice fantasy. Because I'm going to show you later exactly how you can monetize what you're already doing like that. But let's go back to Facebook. So what they figured out is people want to talk. They want to talk about themselves. They want to show themselves. They want to peek into other people's lives. And they figured out a way to do it. They figured they give you a platform. They give you a service. Here, come on, it's free. You get on and you register and you can do this whole thing. And they figured out a way to advertise, and it's all based on how many impressions, and there's all these metrics on how they do it. That's not the important part. The important part is they figured out a way to keep you involved because they're able to facilitate something you're already doing. That's the important part. Google, pretty much the same thing, right? You want to go in a search engine, you want to see something, there it is. Okay. So, why aren't you able to do that? Anybody. There's no wrong answer here. How come you can't be the next Facebook? Why? Anybody got that kind of money to start one? Anybody got the connections? Anybody got the time? Anybody got the brainstorm? Do you know the right people? You living in the right house? I don't know. All that stuff, right? Probably not. I'm willing to bet there's probably nobody in this room that's going to invent the next Facebook. I hope I'm wrong. But let's just say for a minute that nobody here is going to do that because that's not who we are. We don't operate at that level. Maybe we don't even want to. But what if we could adopt a similar strategy? What if we could actually create in our lives a similar structure with similar dynamics? Now, I used the example earlier of referring a movie. Okay? How many of you do that? Not necessarily movies, but you tell friends about an easier way to get down the motorway, or you tell them about a new car or a new... Is that pretty much everybody? You're good friends, right? That's what good friends do. Yeah. How many of you have found a honorable way or a legitimate way or an easy way to monetize that? Now, some of you are raising your hands because you already know the secret to wealth creation. But for most of us, it's like, what do you mean? That doesn't compute. Okay. Well, in life, there are some real limitations. There's limitations of money, time, skills, experience, connections, location. These things hold us back. And see, one of the things that I've made a real passion of mine is finding ways that we can have what I'd call average people. People that not necessarily have the big college degrees or the big reputation or the big bank account, to actually create for themselves a way to break out of the wage slave syndrome. Because let's look at the various ways that you can create financial wealth in your life. What are the options? Okay, you've heard about this $1 billion lottery, right? Is that a real option, or is that just, that's not real,
Still
is it?
working on it.
Still working on it. Perfect. Yeah, donation. Give the donation. What about inheritance? Anybody here going to inherit a lot of money? You don't have to tell us if you are. I'm just asking. Not likely, right? What about working harder? Can you really, here's the thing. I'm sure all of you are hard workers, because most people I know are hard workers. Even the people who don't work are working hard at not working. So, I mean, that's hard work. But if working hard was the recipe to financial freedom, how come you're not already rich? You know, that the two are not correlated. Did the Facebook guys, did they work real hard? Well, they probably did some, but didn't they kind of,
They work smarter.
they worked smart and they were at the right place, at the right time, and the right circumstance, you know, like that.
Creativity.
Yeah, and they probably had a great idea, and they moved on that idea. Now, was it risky? Well, the risks were probably low for them at that point, but yeah, it was risk. They could be a waste of time. It could have been a failure. They could have looked like idiots. They could have been sued. Who knows what happened? But they didn't have necessarily a lot of resources. What about time? Do you really have extra time? Anybody here have extra time? I've heard all about extra time all my life. I want to know anybody got any extra time? Because I can't seem to find it. I don't know. Maybe there's some out there somewhere. But time's a limitation. If you have a job, if you have family, if you have aging parents, if you have stuff going on in a busy life, who has time? Who has time to brainstorm these ideas and create the structures, right? And maybe you just prefer, like me, you prefer the quiet country life. I mean, I've lived in the cities, and it's great, and I love it. And at this point, I'm much more happy in a low-density environment. However, guess where a lot of the activity, the commercial activity is in the city, isn't it? So, you know, not everybody wants to live there, so that can be a limitation, right? Do you have all the skills you need necessarily to be one of these great poobahs who makes all this stuff happen? I don't know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Probably not. Do you have like big degrees in education? Do you have the contacts? Probably not. So what I'm fascinated with is how can we help average people, normal people, create access to a wealthy life, to a truly rounded, wealthy life. And again, I want to focus mainly on the money piece, but I also want to bring in the relationship piece and the purpose piece and the passion piece and, you know, feeling like I'm contributing to others, I'm making a difference in the world. And health, these are all part of a healthy, whole, wealthy life. So about 50, 60 years ago, a couple of guys got together, and they weren't the Facebook guys. They're not even 50 or 60 yet. But these guys got together in sort of not outrageous circumstance, and they were salespeople. And they got together and said, you know what? We're seeing how regular wholesale retail, what I'll call normal business, works and how things are sold. And we think we've got a better idea. Now, I just want to back up a minute and let you know that better ideas are not always popular. Matter of fact, in America, retail, what they call a department store, you know what that is? That's like a Target or Kmart, where you have a bunch of different things. Before the 1920s or 30s, everything was sold in different stores pretty much. You wanted a harness for your horse, you went into this shop. If you wanted shoes or gloves, you went here, and you want food there. This thing called department stores was almost made illegal. I don't know if you're aware of that. Yeah, almost made illegal. And, you know, that's probably because the people had all these little shops when I think it was J.C. Penney or somebody like that started the first department store. They brought it all on one roof. They could sell a lot more and their expenses were a lot less. So they were making a lot more money. They were starting to create more wealth. And of course, that was unpopular with all the other people. So they got together with the politicians and tried to pass a law. Luckily, it didn't work because department stores were huge for many, many years, big chains. And Walmart, of course, being one of the bigger success stories of that. Franchising became hugely popular and still is, but that was almost made illegal. Wow, think about that for a minute. If franchising was illegal, you wouldn't have all the different grocery stores, and you wouldn't have the petrol stations, and you wouldn't have the restaurants and the services and all this stuff. Wow, wouldn't that be a shame? But those people got wealthy. The first people who decided to franchise, like McDonald's. Say what you want about the products, but the company is brilliant. It's still one of the wealthier companies on the planet. So new ideas are not necessarily always popular. But in the 1950s and 1960s, a new idea came along. And these guys up in Michigan, in America, decided, well, we're going to go another step. We're going to get products out of the grocery stores and department stores, and we're actually going to sell them right to the customer from the factory. And the thing took off. And they got extremely wealthy. They're mega billionaires. So these guys started out a whole nother chapter in how they created wealth. And in those days, they called this thing multi-level marketing. Today, we call it network marketing. Now, why would network marketing be so radical rather than franchising or department stores? Well, who knows how much it costs to start even an inexpensive franchise today? Anybody?
Tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, some of them are even over $1 million or more. And so who's got that kind of money in the room right now? Nobody's raising their hand. Who's got the time to go open a franchise, to go to the school, and to, you're probably going to be there, hopefully, working it yourself to save, to make it work, and, And let's say you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in, and you're selling hamburgers. How many hamburgers do you have to sell to make your 100,000 back? A lot, right? So that's a risky business. As a matter of fact, the statistics on franchising are not that great. You might think, oh, it's a recipe for success, but when you take a close look at it, you'll find it's not a guaranteed success package. These guys said, no, we want the people's franchise. We actually want anybody to be able to get into business for no investment and create their own distribution network and be able to monetize that by giving away information, valuable information for free. Does that sound familiar? Give away valuable information for free. We don't want them to make things. We don't want them to ship things or collect money or do returns or customer service. We just want them to do what human beings already do, which is tell their friends about good things, like movies or CDs. But they said, no, we're going to start with household cleaning products. Well, that was 50, 60 years ago. This has evolved into a $200 billion a year business. That's big. That's bigger than some countries' GDP. There's 150 million people worldwide doing this. And I would venture to say none of them have invested more than a couple $100 to get going in their successful business. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands, I would probably, because there's 1.5 million, I would have to say probably millions of people who have either retired their spouse, meaning they bought back the rest of their life so they don't have to go to work. They've paid off their mortgage. They've bought cars. They've put their kids through school. They've created a retirement security for themselves. They've created a family business where their entire family can be involved. They've created a willable business so when they die, the revenue stream keeps coming to their children and heirs, or whoever they leave it to. And they've done it all outside the system, outside the normal structure. Pretty brilliant, pretty brilliant. And they've done it all in a way that doesn't require what I call monomaniacal insanity. Some people would call it OCD. It's like you don't have to be crazy to do it. You can actually have a life. And no offense to anybody that I'm slightly OCD, so yeah. But no offense to anybody about that. But look, the thing is, they did it in a way that creates real wealth. Wouldn't it be wonderful to create financial freedom and get relationship richness with it, to make a difference in people's lives, right? To give something back to the community, so to speak, yeah? And to give yourself time freedom, to liberate yourself. Wow, brilliant. My hat's off to those guys. And one of them's still alive today. He's an older man, but his family's still involved. So let's look at this thing, this new creation on the planet, one of the newer businesses on the planet, and look at how this could work for you. Again, we're taking some of the same technology, if you will, or the same structure that these wealth is being created today by these big mega companies, and we're allowing you and your family and your friends and your community to do it. To me, this is good news. This is important news. This is really important about. Because again, what are your options? Do you have a real plan B? Is the lottery a real plan B? No, we already decided that's not it. What about inheritance? Hoping somebody else in your life gets rich so they'll leave you money? Going to work more? Some of you are probably working 2 or 3 jobs. I mean, I don't know how many more hours you can work, and is that really going to create freedom or just a little bit more money?
Creativity.
Yeah. What's your plan B? Anybody? You got another one? Because I've studied this. I've spent years looking at how typical people can break out of the rat race. And I have not come up with another way. So if you got another way, please share it. But if not, I encourage you to take a look at this, because you see, there's an opportunity. There's a time in life, there's a time in your specific life, and there's a time in the world when opportunity presents itself. If the Facebook guys had not jumped on that in that moment, Facebook wouldn't exist. They wouldn't be young gazillionaires. They wouldn't have made a difference. You wouldn't be able to connect with your friends the same way. And the opportunity is now for us. The economy, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news or disrespectful to people who say differently, but the economy is not looking pretty. It's been going down for years, right? The underemployment, the misemployment, or the sheer unemployment is bad and getting worse. The major economies of the world are almost all in trouble. The latest news out of Asia is not pretty. Europe, pretty bad. Japan, bad. And wherever you live or wherever your economy is, this particular economy is very, very, very dependent on those economies. You just want to be aware there's a hurricane out there and it's coming this way. So you want to just take that on board and check it out for yourself. So let's look at how this thing works and how you can personally get involved if you choose to. So first thing I would say is network marketing is a big field. There's thousands of companies, and they do everything from selling jewelry and cosmetics and chocolate and coffee and clothing and nutritional supplements and services like financial counseling. And I mean, it's just a wide range of companies and what they offer. So first of all, find something that resonates with you. I'm probably not going to be passionate about selling women's lingerie. I mean, I could be, but probably not. And you may not be passionate about selling chocolate. I don't know. Find something that you like, and there's probably a company or a line that's being represented. So that's important. Even more importantly, do some research. Find a company that has high integrity. Now, I'll just warn you right up front. If you're new to looking at this industry, there's kind of 2 categories of companies. There's what we call startup companies that may just start literally today, and you might be the first person, and that's great. A lot of excitement, a lot of opportunity, the sky's the limit. But there are also challenges with startup companies, and that is the sky's the limit, and it's new, and it's exciting, but there's no track record, and there's no guarantee of success. And unfortunately, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, I'm just giving you information, the statistics on startup companies is, like in the broader economy, pretty poor. The first 5 years, probably 70, 80, maybe even 90% of them will not be sending out checks. They'll be out of business by year 5. So just be aware of that. That doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but just be aware of that. There's older line companies that have been around a while. They've proven their business model. They're usually well-financed, and they have broad product ranges. Now, if a company's been in business 5 years and still very stable, chances are it's going to be in business another 5 years, right? And if it's been in business 10 years, that's sort of the magic number. Those companies are rock solid. as long as they don't make the obvious mistakes. So do your research. Find a company that resonates with you. Find a company that's, fits one of those two. And find a company that has a mission that you can get behind. Because each company is different. Just like anybody know the difference between those major supermarket chains, right? You can go to one and it's going to be a certain experience, and another's a certain experience, and another's a certain experience. They'll have different products, different prices, different levels of service, different displays, different marketing. Yep. So you want to get a company that suits you, that suits your personality. Because this is going to be your business. You will own your own network marketing business. So it's important you want to be surrounded by things that are going to help you succeed. You want to look at not only the products and the company, but you want to look at how well it's funded. Even more importantly, what's their educational program? Now, why would I say their educational program? Because one of the benefits of being in a network marketing business is that you get world-class education for free. And I say that as an authority. I was introduced powerfully. I have lectured in the university system. And I know the value of education, and I know the cost of education. And I'll say this, the education in network marketing industry is higher, way higher in terms of applied knowledge, and it's free. It's generally free, or there may be a small facility charge to cover training of the venue costs. But you can learn financial literacy, you can learn about how to make money, what are the rules of being in business, how does business work, how does it thrive. You can also get relationship education, what we call emotional literacy. What behaviors empower and support people, what behaviors disempower people, how to work in groups. What is this thing called leadership, and how do I recognize it, and how do I support it and foster it and actually, call it forth? What is this thing called acknowledgement? And why is that valuable? And how do I receive acknowledgement? How do I give acknowledgement? What is this thing called presenting and speaking? What are communication skills? Why are they important? And how do we craft those? And how do we get better? Right? And more and more and more. So you want to look at what kind of education is available. You want to look at what's the quality of it. And you can sample, you can taste it. And you want to make sure that it resonates with you, because again, there's going to be different philosophies with different companies. I would say probably the most important thing, the single most important thing that I look at is who do I get to work with day to day? Who's what's called the upline? Who's going to be my teacher, my trainer, my supporter, my champion? Who's going to give me the help that I need to do something maybe I've never done before? I mean, maybe some of you have successful businesses, but for those of you that haven't, when I was working in the corporate world, there were very few people that were brave enough to get out of a job and go start a business. It was very, very rare. And typically employees are not trained in the skills you need to be an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is a very, very different mindset. It's a very different skill set. It's a different way of being in the world, different dynamics, different behaviors. You want somebody who is successful, who has the time and the interest to work with you. That's going to show you the ropes. And more importantly, who's going to help you, who's going to do it alongside you, who's going to walk with you and be committed to your success. I would say that's the key piece right there. That's the number one. Because all companies have good products. I mean, or they wouldn't stay in business, let's face it. All companies have, good, adequate training. Some are better, that's for sure. But that person that you work with is the key, in my opinion. So you want to do some research, right? Do your research. Figure out, okay, there's this, there's this, there's this. At some point, you're going to go, I know what I want. I know what's out there. I know what I want. What's the next step? Anybody? What would be the next obvious step? Of course, get involved. Take action. You got to take action. It can't just be an intellectual thing or a maybe one day thing. I mean, it can be. That's fine if you want to hold it there. But that alone will not create true wealth in your life. Take action. I don't know what age you are. It doesn't matter. But can anybody answer me when was the best time to buy real estate? It would have been probably 10 years ago, right? Or, whatever, right? When's the best time to take your step for wealth creation? Yeah. Is it tomorrow or is it today? Yeah. Tomorrow it's going to look like I wish I'd done it yesterday.
Yes.
So you want to get into action. Look, the blessings are many. My life has been blessed. I didn't come from, I didn't have the lottery, I didn't have the inheritance, I didn't have any of that. I started with very humble circumstances. But through a series of fortunate incidents and meeting people, and my life's it's been blessed. But the biggest blessing of all was getting introduced to network marketing. I'll tell you my little story, and then we'll wrap this up and we can move on. But I was with my lovely wife, and we were in America, and we were going. We had some out of country visitors, and we were going camping, going out to a beautiful national park. And I stopped by this festival. It was just a little festival in a town along a creek, and it was little booths and people with services, chiropractors and health food and all this stuff. And it was great. And I said, well, we're going camping. Let's get some stuff. And we stopped in and found this product, and I was intrigued. It was pretty cool. I thought, well, that makes sense to me. I'll take some. And so as I was buying some, the guy said, oh, yeah, by the way, if you like it, look, I'll show you how to get your stuff for free. I said, oh, yeah. Okay, whatever. Just give me the stuff. I heard him, but I didn't pay attention to it, because I just wanted to get the stuff and go. Well, I got the product, and I went camping, and wow, I felt like somebody turned the lights on. My brain was working better, I felt better, I had more energy, and so I came back and said, I called the guy up and said, yeah, I want to get some more. And by the way, since I'm buying this stuff, what was that about getting it for free? And so one thing led to another. It turns out he was involved in network marketing. And I got involved with that company, and within a year and a half had totally replaced my income, and was feeling very, very good about what I was doing. I felt like I had new purpose in my life, passion. I was truly making a difference, making a direct difference in the people that I shared the product with. I watched the lights come on for them. I watched them have more enthusiasm, more vitality. Just things have been clearing up for them. And I was making money doing it, and I was learning. And I felt really, really good. Well, that was 20 years ago, and I'll fast forward a bit. In my career in network marketing, I've been extremely blessed. We've made over $10 million, and that's cash. And, we didn't put money into the business. That was all profit, by the way. And I've had the pleasure and the privilege of working with thousands of people worldwide. I've been able to help lots and lots of people of very humble circumstances, create in their lives time freedom, location freedom, financial freedom, deep, powerful relationships. And for those that want it, even a spiritual path if they want. And, I use that word loosely. You interpret it the way you want. But when people are passionate and they're making a difference, I call that spiritual. People have meaning and purpose and passion in their life. And I've been a part of that. I don't take credit for it, but I've been a part of that. And I know when I go to bed at night and put my head down on a pillow, I know I've done some good in the world. And that for me is probably the biggest part of true wealth. So I can say I have those things in my life. And I didn't do it alone. And I did it because somebody cared enough to share with me what I've tried to share with you here today. So I want to thank you for your listening. And I want to encourage you to do your due diligence, do your research, and then take action. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Because I can guarantee one thing. If you're alive 10 years from now, you'll just be 10 years older. And unless you're 10 years closer to your passion and being truly wealthy, I would say you've missed an opportunity. So I want to thank you for your time, and may you have all the success that you deserve.